Across the United States, from New York to Los Angeles, millions have taken to the streets in a coordinated wave of demonstrations against President Donald Trump's administration. The rallies, branded as No Kings protests, highlight growing frustration over what organizers describe as authoritarian behavior and the misuse of federal power. Protesters carried banners reading "Democracy, not dictatorship" and "No one above the law." Law enforcement maintained a heavy presence as tensions rose in several cities. Reports suggest that despite isolated clashes, most gatherings remained peaceful. The turnout represents one of the largest waves of political protest in recent U.S. history, marking a significant challenge to the president's authority. The No Kings movement is led by a coalition of grassroots organizations, students, and civil rights activists who accuse President Trump of undermining democratic institutions. Organizers have demanded congressional oversight and the immediate rollback of recent executive actions they call unconstitutional. One organizer stated that the protests represent a stand for freedom, justice, and equality. Demonstrators also condemned the alleged politicization of the Justice Department, claiming it is being used to target political opponents. The rallies were coordinated through social media and community networks, showing the power of digital mobilization in modern protest culture. Many protesters voiced fears that the administration's actions are eroding civil liberties and consolidating power in the hands of a few. President Trump and members of his administration have dismissed the protests as politically motivated theatrics. Speaking from the White House, Trump called the demonstrators radical agitators and accused them of spreading misinformation. Republican lawmakers echoed his sentiments, branding the rallies hate marches and anti-American displays. The administration insists that its actions, particularly involving the National Guard and law enforcement, are necessary to preserve order and protect the nation from internal threats. Critics argue that this rhetoric is part of a larger effort to delegitimize dissent and intimidate opposition voices. Despite mounting criticism, officials maintain that the government will not yield to what they describe as mob pressure. The protests have further polarized Washington, with Democrats calling for restraint and dialogue while Republicans accuse them of enabling chaos. Democratic leaders praised citizens for exercising their constitutional rights and condemned what they call the administration's use of force against peaceful protesters. Meanwhile, several Republican senators defended the president, insisting that his firm response is necessary to maintain national stability. Political analysts note that the unrest could reshape the upcoming election narrative, turning the focus toward freedom of speech, civil rights, and executive power. As debates intensify on Capitol Hill, both parties appear to be preparing for a prolonged confrontation over the boundaries of presidential authority. On the streets, the protests have a deeply human tone. Participants include teachers, healthcare workers, veterans, and students, all united by a shared sense of concern for the country's democratic values. Many describe the movement as not just political, but moral. "We're here because we believe in the America that listens to its people," said one protester in Chicago. Others carried signs quoting the Constitution, demanding accountability and transparency. In several cities, musicians and clergy members joined marches, turning them into peaceful expressions of solidarity. Yet, there is also a strong undercurrent of anger and exhaustion, a sign of how deeply divided the nation has become under Trump's presidency. As protests continue into their second week, both sides appear entrenched. Organizers have announced plans for additional rallies in Washington, D.C. and other major cities, calling for a National Day of Democracy. The White House is reportedly considering stricter crowd control measures, sparking concerns among human rights groups. Analysts warn that the situation could escalate if neither side steps back. The No Kings movement shows no sign of slowing, and experts predict that public pressure will intensify as the election season approaches. The question now facing America is whether this mass mobilization will lead to meaningful reform or further deepen the political divide defining the Trump era.